Greetings and hello everyone. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar live on August 21st, 2025. If it's your first time attending one of our webinars, Cathedra means learning in Creek. And today you will be learning about Grant Writing 101, how to establish and maintain excellent grant funder relationships. And that's going to be taught by, the amazing Diane Leonard. My name is Brianna Birch, and I am the Training and Development Coordinator here at the Native Learning Center, and we are so honored that you all could join us today. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Before we get started, I want to familiarize you with the learning platform and where things can be found. I have also put the link to a PDF of today's slides in the chat that you can access. You can also access a copy of the slides as well as today's webinar recording in the future by going to the courses section here on the platform. Any resource items for download are also available within the online course when you go through the course pages. Each time you are ready to join one of our webinars moving forward in the future, you're just going to log onto the website and click the large green banner that will be across the top of the screen, like in this picture here. And when you first join the webinar, it is going to prompt you to do an audio test before joining. Please also just select the listen only option so that we can avoid any audio feedback during the webinar. If you need to change the speaker that your sound is playing from, you can also select the phone icon down at the bottom of your screen, and this will bring up a list of your speaker and mic devices so that you can choose your preferred audio. And we also do encourage you to participate during today's webinar, and we will also primarily rely on the public chat that you can find in the left gray menu panel. You can open the public chat and the shared notes as well. And if you click on the public chat, you will see a chat open between all webinar attendees, the NLC facilitator, as well as your webinar instructor. Simply click in the box that says send message to public chat and type the message that you want to send and hit or click enter on the blue paper airplane icon to send your message. Please send your comments and any questions that you have into the chat, and feel free to use the raise hand feature in the bottom right hand corner of the screen if you think that we have missed anything along the way. And any tech support issues can also be submitted here, and I'll do my best to try and support you and help you navigate through it. And if you click on the shared notes section, let me go back here. But if you click on the shared notes section, like I said, you are going to find some links that I have posted here. You'll also find a link for today's feedback survey, which we do highly encourage you to complete, just to let us know how we're doing and let us know anything that you may think that we can improve on. You can also find the link to the location of our Cathedra webinars archive on our YouTube channel, and a link to connect with us on LinkedIn, as well as a link to bookmark for easy login to Cathedra Constant Learning in the future. Oh, it looks like I went all the way back. I'm sorry, guys. And at this time, we really love to get to know you and who you all are. If you feel comfortable enough, please go ahead in the chat. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation. If you have one, you may not be a tribal member or you may be a tribal employee. And you can also list your work or role in Indian country that may have led you to today's webinar. And then while we're all getting to know each other, one quick final note. I don't know what, Diane, is it doing that for you?
It is. Yeah, you're into my slides now. We can go back a few, I think.
That's so weird.
Who knows? I'm going to be super light on the mouse touch here when it's my turn in a second.
I know, right? It's so strange. I'm so sorry, guys. But yes, one quick final note. Try to avoid clicking on the red menu panel all the way on the left of your screen. If you click on the red menu panel, it will take you out of the live webinar, but that's okay. If you do accidentally click this, you can just simply rejoin by once again clicking on the green banner at the top of the screen. And with that being said, it is my great pleasure to introduce today's webinar instructor, Diane Leonard. I will now hand it off to you. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with the pointer today.
I'm hoping that it's just, yep, it was just a moment, right? We all
I
know.
know.
It has those moments for sure. But I'm so excited to be with everyone today and talking about one of my favorite topics. Yes, you're right. My favorite topic is grants, but it's a subtopic within grants that I get so excited about. We're going to be talking about funder relationships, how to create them, and also how to maintain them. So funder stewardship, if you will. And the reason that this is one of my favorite topics, well, some of you, I recognize your names, and hello, it's so good to see you again here at the Native Learning Center. For those that haven't had a chance to meet me before, I'm Diane, and I love all things grants. I've been in the grant-related space my entire adult career, the nonprofit sector my entire career. That even spans to like my first job when I was 16, it's true. But when my first professional adult job came about, it was as a grant maker. So I was the grant maker that people were trying to build relationships with. So I developed some very strong thoughts and opinions that have influenced now the 20 plus years on the grant seeking side of what my team and I coach our clients on. Now, why do I say that I coach our clients on it? We help them with their real writing work, like hands-on help them with their writing, but we coach them on relationship work because, little sidebar, grant makers of any kind don't like to hear from external consultants. We are not the ones who have the answers to their questions without usually saying, that's a great question, let me get back to you. So I feel very strongly about that you, as the individuals, as the tribal organizations, as the employees of the tribal organizations, you are the ones that hold the amazing information that funders want to hear about. So that's a great thing to consider when we talk about our relationships today. You have what the funders want. Now, also what's really fun is when I turn slides in to the Native Learning Center, sometimes I do it a little bit in advance, right? Never like the day of, oh my goodness, that wouldn't be nice. Nope, we're all planning further ahead than that. But I've got some good news. We got a few big grant awards recently, and it's not 135.1 million awarded. It's now 137.4. Those new awards, you guessed it, are in part because of the relationship work that the applicant organizations did. So that's just a little bit about me. In the public chat, I'm so excited to see folks letting us know where you're joining us from today. That's really helpful for me to get a sense of just the different parts of the country, the different types of work that you might be involved in. And you know what would be actually amazing for me to hear is what your comfort level is related to grantmaker relationships. Let's do a comfort level scale of 1 to 10. 1, I'm not comfortable with the idea of grantmaker relationships. In fact, that's why I'm here, right? Like I want to become comfortable. 10, I'm really, really comfortable, but I'm always looking for new ideas. So if you feel comfortable, please, in the public chat, letting me know what you would say is your current comfort level on a scale of 1 to 10 related to relationships with grant makers. There is no judgment on my part in terms of your answer. I just want to get a sense of who is here in the room. Today, we're going to look at the items on your screen. There are big, broad agenda items. I want to make sure that we all have shared understanding about why these relationships are important. We're going to talk about how we build relationships for the first time if it's a funder you have never approached before. Then we'll look at funders you do have maybe some past connections or even current connections with and think about how to constantly improve those relationships. And throughout today, I'm going to give you tactical examples of what those relationships have looked like. So you're going to see some real examples along the way. I will at the end ask if you have any outstanding questions, things that you want to get answered before you go back to your regularly scheduled day. But I strongly encourage you, if you have a question in the moment while I'm talking about something, the public chat where you have potentially said hello, where you're joining from, maybe you've started to answer my 1 to 10 scale in terms of comfort level with funder relationships, but that is where you can ask me a question at any time during today's session. I'm watching it. I've got it in the very center of my screen. So when something pings up on the screen in the public chat, I'm looking at it to see if it is your question that I should include before I move on. So that's our plan for today. Why is this so important? The reality is that grants are relationship-based. Not always because we have maybe gone together, like gone face to face, done some handshaking, some pats on the back, we talked to each other, had coffee together. That might not be the type of relationship we're talking about, but relationships, any sort of contact, conversation, exchange with a grant maker is important because it gives you a competitive advantage. Not necessarily at that final decision table, but it will at a minimum give you additional information that will help you customize your grant application. So when we're talking about funder relationships, we're talking about it for all types of grants, government and foundation. Sometimes when I say grant maker relationships and I talk about government and government grants, folks say, really? I thought it was just about foundations. In the public chat, Y for yes and for no, how many of you were surprised that this conversation about grantmaker relationships includes emphasis on government grants? Did I surprise anyone? I'm not trying to surprise you. I'm just curious to know your candid thought. Did it surprise you or not? Y for yes, I was surprised to learn that relationships are an important part of government grant applications. And nope, didn't surprise me at all, Diane. If you want to let me know that candid answer in the public chat, that'd be great. So why are these relationships so important? I told you that they're going to give you a competitive advantage. So that is one reason that it's important. We know that competition is fierce, fiercer now than ever before. We know that application timelines seem to be shrinking in terms of how much time we have from when it is opened until it is closed. That means that we need to put together the most competitive application possible in a very short period of time. Why are relationships so important? The reality is that relationships with grant makers is an important part of the overall grant life cycle. Or maybe you want to refer to it as the 5 R's of grant writing. But the 5 items on the screen, some of you may have seen this before in my webinars here at the Native Learning Center. The relationships component cannot be overlooked, cannot be, well, shortchanged. You can't find a shortcut around it and still expect your grant-seeking efforts to be incredibly competitive, sustainable, and ultimately fruitful with grant dollar awards. So a real quick walkthrough in case the image on the screen is new to you. We're going to approach this grant life cycle image as we would if we were looking at a clock on the wall. We're going to start at that 12 o'clock noon position where it says readiness. Readiness is about your eligibility, your technical ability in order to apply. Once we have those basic building blocks in place, we could move clockwise around our grant life cycle. We would want to do our research, looking at grant makers that we think have a funding program that would be a good fit for us. And so this could be a combination of foundation, state, and federal funding. So finding who are the best funders for you. In fact, could you let me know in the public chat, are you thinking primarily for your role, for your work, are you primarily thinking about foundation grant funding, or are you thinking about government grant funding? And if you want to do shorthand of F and G, that's fine too. If you'd be willing to let me know that in the public chat, that would be great. Regardless of your answer, once you have found the best fit funders for you, for your work that needs grant funding, then we can move to our third grant life cycle item. That takes us to the relationships element, which we're going to spend the rest of today talking about. As you can see, there are 5 items on the screen, and relationships is number 3. I've not even talked about writing yet. Writing is the 4th element. We need to address readiness, research, and relationships before we sit down to customize our writing work to build our competitive application. If we don't, if we overlook relationships, if we try to treat it like a shortcut, sure, technically we could write an application. Sure, technically we could submit an application, but it will be lacking the competitiveness required to stand out in the application process. So that's the big risk that we're taking if, as a grant applicant, we try to just quick get around, find a detour around grant maker relationships. Now, what is that 5th element? Oh, it's reporting, because if we have done the first 4 elements, readiness, research, relationships, and writing, if we have done those and followed our best practices, we will probably, hopefully, get the grant, or a grant, or 2, or 3, or 5, and then we'll have to worry about managing the grant and providing reports to our grant maker so we can start the life cycle all over again. The grant life cycle is the same whether you typed in government or only foundation or both. Your grant life cycle is the same. You might be in different stages of the grant life cycle for different grant makers. What I don't know about those of you here in the room yet is how long you have been working with grants. Could you let me know the unit of time for how long you've been working with grants in any capacity? I'm not saying you have to be a full-time grant writer or grant professional, but how long have you been working with grants? It might be 16 minutes. That could be the unit of time that you share in the public chat. That's fine. It could be 16 weeks, 16 years. There's no right or wrong answer. But if you could let me know how long you have been working with grants, that would be really helpful for me, just to get, again, a sense of some of the differences that we have here in the room, some of the wonderful background and skills that are present. As we think about that grant life cycle, our 5 items, I have a little sidebar of a pro tip. When we think about our plan, who are we going to apply to? What is the list of grants that we want to apply to in this year, whether we're thinking calendar year or a different fiscal year? And that list might be visualized on a calendar. Industry jargon is that we will call it a grant calendar. Grant calendar, it's a calendar of all of our application deadlines that we would expect to apply for, all of our grant reports that we need to submit in order to stay as a grantee. Here's the pro tip to get you started. I would also ask you to put relationship outreach and relationship stewardship activities on your grant calendar. Put it right in your plan. It's not only about getting those applications out the door. If we put the relationship outreach on our calendar, what does that do? Puts it front and center for us. And I don't know about you, but most of my colleagues, their days are first prioritized by what is on their calendar. And so if you put relationship outreach to Foundation A and relationship stewardship activities for government agency B on your grant calendar, on your grant plan, you are increasing the likelihood that those actions will happen. Maybe not on that specific day, maybe some other time that week, but by keeping that front and center, you are increasing the likelihood that it will happen. I see we've got lots of folks who have been working with grants for a few years. I'm guessing that we have a few other more seasoned grant pros here in the room. But for those of you who've had some good exposure, right, being in the field for a few years, you quickly learn a lot. Could you let me know if you already have a grant calendar? I for yes, S for sort of, N for no. Could you let me know in the public chat if you already have a grant calendar? Where it is, what tool it's in. Maybe it's a project management tool, maybe it's a shared Outlook calendar. That doesn't matter. I just want to know if you have one or not. Do you have a grant calendar? So some place that you can see all of your upcoming deadlines, all of your upcoming reports that are due. Okay, so a mix. Some of you are saying you do, some of you are saying you don't. For those of you that said yes, you do, your bonus question, your chance for a Diane Gold Star through the learning platform is to think about, do you already have relationship outreach on the calendar as well? If so, I'm going to throw you some virtual gold stars. If not, that might be a to-do item that you could put on your homework list after today's session. If you don't have a grant calendar, I can grab a quick link for you to a blog post that our team has written about what is a grant calendar so that you could read that then at your convenience. And you could absolutely reach out if you have any other questions for me about what is it, how to build one. Let me put that blog link here in the public chat for you. There you go. So for those of you that don't yet have your grant calendar, I've just given you a description of one in a blog post that you can go find on our team site. Not behind a paywall, nothing about it. You don't have to give us your email. You can just go read that at your convenience. So we know we're going to want to document when it will happen, but let's really talk about what this looks like. I'm going to say something surprising. In fact, I think the entire Native Learning Center team would be surprised if they heard this. I'm an introvert. I'm super shy. I get really nervous when I have to meet new people. Anybody surprised by that? I think if Brooke was online, she might have just fallen out of her desk chair. Really? No, I am. I'm super shy and quiet. Something about being in a space where I get to teach about grant writing, though, just brings me right to life, and I get all excited and animated. But I'm super shy. And so the idea of reaching out to grant makers that I don't know, it gives me a pretty angsty feeling. Now, maybe part of that angsty feeling is because way back in the day, my first job in high school was that I worked for the Muscular Dystrophy Association of Western New York. Fantastic group, really great staff. And they had me calling people who worked in local businesses. Literally, I would go through the phone book to get names, like physical phone book, to get some names of people I was going to call. And I'd have to tell them that they had been nominated to be locked up, and that they were going to have to come to a special lunch and call all the people in their Rolodex in order to raise money and get released back to their office. I think that might have something to do with why I'm really nervous about having to cold call foundations, because I got hung up on more than one time. I tell you that story, though, because I want to reassure you that that is not what it's like when you're calling a grant maker. Unlike those unsuspecting people that were in the middle of their very busy business days, they didn't know someone was going to call and try and convince them to do this fundraising thing. But grant makers, the staff that might work there or be in leadership or their board, the paid staff at a government agency or department, their sole purpose is to give grant funding out to eligible organizations to do work aligned with their goal, aligned with their mission statement, aligned with their purpose. So they need you. So while I might not always have the capacity or necessarily always the preference to talk in the space that you want to in that moment, there is already a whole bunch of shared alignment between you as the person who wants to talk to them and them, the person who has the money that you want to get. So when we think about that first outreach, please don't forget that you have something they want. You have amazing community programs. You have amazing infrastructure projects that better your community. You have something that aligns with what that funder is trying to do. That puts you, well, might not always feel like the driver's seat, but you are truly an important part of their work. They need you. So when we're doing our research, when we're in that second item in our grant life cycle and we're thinking about who are the best funders for us, I want you looking for clues in their materials about what is the grant maker's capacity for communication. Do they have staff? Doesn't mean that staff always have the ability to take all the phone calls or answer all the emails, but do they have any staff? For government, the answer is usually yes. For foundations, it's very difficult to predict. Some do and some don't. In addition to capacity, is there someone that could answer questions in whatever format? We also need to look for clues when we're doing our research about what are their preferences. Some grant makers will tell us on their website or on even their social media profile that they love to talk with people who are interested. And if you've read the guidelines and you have any questions, please call us or please email our program director. They will give you clear indication of where and how and why they would be willing to talk. Not all grant makers are that clear, but that's why when we are doing our research, we're looking for those clues about what is their capacity and what is their preference. Have I convinced you that we want to talk to grant makers yet? I may have, perhaps not. I want to put an idea in your head. You might have already heard me talk about this analogy in the past Native Learning Center session. It's not brand new today. It's something that I'm known to say. We don't want to treat grant makers like an ATM. In fact, let me reach for my emergency 20. Actually, today it's an emergency 220, but you'll get the point. I just, out of my little phone pocket, I just got $40 out. Why do I have crisp yet neatly folded 20s in my wallet? Because I recently went to the ATM. Why did I have to go to the ATM? It's back to school season, and so it's amazing how sometimes my teenagers might have a need for cash. I don't usually carry a lot of cash, but sometimes there's something back to school where cash is needed. And I'm like, oh, my emergency 20 is gone. Better swing by the ATM and get some. Super transactional, right? Maybe you go to the ATM to check your balance. Maybe you go to the ATM to make a deposit. Yes, sure. There's other reasons we could go to the ATM, not just to get physical cash, but regardless of why we're there, it is transactional. If we think about grant makers, we do not want to treat them like ATMs. We do not want to treat them as if it is only a transaction. Cut us a grant check, we do the things, we spend the money. Too transactional. Not all grant makers will have lots of capacity and preference to talk to us, but we want to always have the mindset that grant makers are funding partners. So how do we respect the grant makers? How do we treat them as the potential partners that they are? That's what I want us to look at. How can we build relationships? How can we do outreach that is not transactional? When we think about transactional language, though, in grants, what's really common is someone right about now will say, but isn't it super transactional when the grant makers release like a request for proposal or a notice of funding availability or a funding opportunity announcements? They release the guidelines. So that seems pretty transactional. They release the things, we respond, and we wait to see what happens. I agree. That action is transactional, but there are opportunities for relationship building around the transaction that we want to be paying attention to and thinking about, hopefully before the RFP or the NOFA gets released, potentially sometimes during, and then certainly after. So those guidelines, when they get released, yes, transactional, hey, we're accepting applications and you can go out the transaction of applying. But that does not in any way give you permission to skip over the relationship best practice in our grant life cycle. When we think about who's going to be doing this relationship outreach work, is anyone feeling like there's no room on their plate for you personally to do this work? It's okay if you put your hand up and you say, you don't have to answer me in the public chat. You might just be feeling that way like Diane. I'm not even sure I have time to write all the applications, let alone do the relationship outreach. Yeah, feel it. I hear you. I live it. I see what that looks like for our clients. But it doesn't have to be all about you. You might be the person who chose to, or who is okay with, or who gets to write the grant applications, but that doesn't mean that you have to always be the person who's doing relationship outreach. In fact, I want you to think about the power of your network, the power of the people that you know. Always amazing to me how quickly you can connect the dots. And I want you to think about advisory committees, community leaders, collaborative partners, stakeholders, constituents, those that are around you, and how they could help connect not just your network, but how can they use their network to help you find someone that you could be maybe introduced to at the grantmaker itself. Has anyone ever heard of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? Sort of an old social reference, but the idea is that you could, within 6 degrees of separation, find some connection to, yes, the actor and musician Kevin Bacon. I've used that example for a really long time. But the thing that makes me laugh about it now is that I know that Kevin Bacon is part of a band called the Bacon Brothers. That was newer knowledge. And he and his brother are coming to play for the 2nd year in a row at my little historic opera house here in Clayton, New York in the Thousand Islands. I'm like, I think my degrees of separation, I'm down to 2. Because now he knows my friend, the director at the opera house. I'm like, I used to be like, oh, I wonder if I could get to him in 6. Down to 2. Okay, so maybe we're not trying to get connections directly to Kevin Bacon, but we are trying to find connections to people in grant-making organizations. How can we find those connections? I have a very, very literal tool that's part of our relationship toolkit. I didn't double check that it's in the shared notes today. It should be. If not, I can help double check on that resource so that you get that PDF afterwards. The Grant Maker Relationship Questionnaire. Super fancy name, isn't it? It is the idea that instead of saying to a community member or a colleague or a leader in your organization, instead of saying, do you know anyone at the Diane Leonard Foundation? Doesn't exist, don't worry, fake example here. And having them say, I don't know. You would, on a piece of paper, you can use my template, you can modify my template, you can make it your own template, but you type out or you write out the grant maker's name, like the organization you're trying to connect to. And then you would list anyone that you're aware of that's connected to them, whether they're staff or whether they're board. And that way, instead of letting the person respond to just the name of an organization. Or who I know there. Now they're looking at real names. They might go, oh, I know that person from Rotary when I was involved in it last year. I know that person from my children's school. I think I recognize that name. I wonder if they're in my LinkedIn network. Why do I recognize that name? So it gives a different level of depth to the question you're asking in terms of relationship connections. And you're not asking this person to have a big conversation with their contact. You're not asking them to pitch your project. You're not asking them to write or review your grant application. What you're asking them is if they would be willing to make an introduction. Maybe it's an introduction over text. Maybe it's an introduction at an event in the community. Maybe it's one of those really slick e-introductions. Dear Mr. Smith, I would like to introduce you to my colleague. And my colleague, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Smith, who I know because, and I'll let the two of you take it from here. That might be all that you're asking. Air quotes all, because it still is a really big deal, but that's what you're asking for. Not for them to continue to check in, not for them to try and advocate for your proposal. You're asking for if you have a contact that would be helpful for us to make the introduction. So again, Grantmaker Relationship Questionnaire is where you would head to find that. And so when we look at that and I see, okay, so I'm going to have to find the link to it because it looks like I gave you the presentation slides, but I made a mistake. I think I didn't give you the relationship toolkit PDF. So I'm going to make sure that you get that in the balance of our time together today. And this is part of it. But super, super basic idea. But what we found is that by giving it this structure and making it consistent, so anytime we're asking for a contact, people know what are you asking for, and they can just quick click yes or no. We increased our identification of contacts exponentially. It went from being maybe one per board meeting when we would send a few around to multiple, to now the teams that we work with are having to manage, well, who's got the best fit relationship? Not just, hey, we found one, but that there are so many that are being identified by giving the clarity of not just the grant maker's name, but who are the people at the grant maker, that we're starting to see, like I said, exponentially higher identification of contacts. Now, why might that also be the case? There is one other secret pro tip related to the Grantmaker Relationship Questionnaire. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Can you let me know in the public chat if you're willing to, if you are on the LinkedIn network? Why for yes and for no? I'm not saying you're super active there, that you're posting all the time. Don't worry, I'm not going to go ask you to connect. I will connect with you if you want to, but you don't have to. But could you let me know if you're on LinkedIn or not? The reason, in addition to this Grantmaker Relationship Questionnaire document, the other reason that we started to see such an increase in terms of identifying who might be a contact was that we showcased how to identify on LinkedIn if someone was connected. So if you have community members or leaders or colleagues that are super well connected, you think, and are active on LinkedIn, it might be worth a few minutes showing them, doing a screen share in a Zoom meeting, pulling it up on the projector if you're in a big conference room together, showing folks how to search for a name and then look at the contacts and look at what are the options. For example, Lisa Lawson, which is the president and CEO at the Annie E. Casey Foundation. They are a foundation that only accepts proposals by invitation. So if you're trying to find a connection to that foundation, on the particular day I grabbed this screen image, I had 42 mutual connections with the president and CEO of that foundation. Now, I, as the person you might be asking for a warm introduction, I have to decide which of my 42 connections is best for me, so I could reach out and then make the introduction and help you have a conversation or have an email exchange. But you might say, actually, I have 2 or 3 board members whom it shows are connected to Lisa in a similar, like a second or third degree way, and I can see how those dots are connected. So it's not that you would want to have all 3 people reaching out, but you would want to look at the strength of the relationships across those 3 people and say, well, who should we have try first? And make choices about who's going to help try to get that warm introduction. So it's the pairing of both those ideas, the basic grantmaker relationship questionnaire, as well as then our idea here for using LinkedIn and its power of seeing the connections to help get folks that are going to be willing to make warm introductions. I'm curious, has anybody ever tried using LinkedIn like that to try and find connections to grantmakers? It is surprisingly easy, but it takes some time. The thing that folks will sometimes say back, a question we'll often get, I get it, it's going to take a few minutes, I'm going to have to load up the profile, but then the person's going to know that I was looking at their profile. They may. It depends on if they have a premium LinkedIn subscription or not. If they have a premium subscription, it will tell them everyone that looks at their profile. For folks who don't have premium, it will tell them occasionally a name, but sometimes it just tells them like what industry folks are from or what organization they might be from, but usually like at a higher industry level. So you want your colleagues that are doing that looking in LinkedIn to be comfortable with the idea that it might be known that they were looking for it. So you do want to disclose that, that it might be visible to the person you're trying to get connected to, that someone was looking at their profile. But happy to talk about it more offline. It's an idea for how you can increase the identification of who's connected to whom. You might say, I don't need to use LinkedIn. We're going to stick to our local community and our networks and the power of that. And so instead, I'd like you to move past the grantmaker relationship questionnaire. Let's pretend that you have identified someone that's a connection that could have a conversation, or you've said, it's going to be me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to reach out to this grantmaker. I'm going to be the one to talk to them and try to establish a relationship. So I would like for you to pretend that you are maybe in a big office building, getting into a bank of elevators, and you walk in and you're like, there is the funder. They're right there. I'm about to ride in an elevator with them to the 27th floor. Or maybe you would prefer to pretend that you are at a community event. It could be that you're about to stand at like one of those tall tops, right? Those nice little round tables. There's some snacks, some beverages, and you're about to stand next to the funder and have an opportunity to chat with them. Any scenario like that, you come up with others as well, but something like that where you're going to get to communicate with the funder. What are you going to say to them? Remember me, I'm the introvert that gets super nervous about reaching out to people that I don't know. And so what would I come up with, do you think, to help make that better and easier for myself? That's right. We've got talking points, because they'll be different for each funder, but I like to have a plan in place. So we've got 3 main talking points that I want you to be prepared with. Or if it's someone else in your organization that's going to be doing the interaction, that you would want to prepare for them. The first is I want you to be prepared with an introduction. Who are you? What organization are you with? If the funder is not from your local community, you might want to give them a little geographic positioning. If I say to folks that I am from the Thousand Islands and I'm not basically in my own backyard, right, my own little community or county, I don't want to assume that folks know where I'm talking about. Sometimes folks will misconstrue that 1,000 islands. Did you mean 10,000 lakes? Like, no, 1,000 islands. Were you talking about the dressing? Well, like, yes, because it was based here, but folks don't necessarily know that I'm talking about a very tiny portion of the St. Lawrence River from the end of Lake Ontario, slightly downriver, not even all the way to Montreal. We'd be out of the Thousand Islands if we were that far. Folks don't always know. So I might need to give them a little bit of geographic context. I'm not talking about New York City, I'm talking about far, far, far upstate New York. So come up with a way that you could quickly give a little bit of geographic positioning if you're talking to someone who's not from your area. You may tell them what your role is within your tribal organization, but who you are, who you're with. We're not getting into all the work of your project yet. We're not telling them that you are eligible because you're a tribal organization. A lot of 501c3 nonprofit organizations make the mistake of giving a lot of their history and when did they get their 501c3. You don't need that. Just a quick intro. Your second item is based on your research. So based on the second part of that grant life cycle image I showed you earlier, why do you think you are such a good fit? This is about that funding partner idea. Why do you think that you are such a good fit with that particular grant maker? There's something as you were reading their guidelines, there's something as you were reading their website that made you, and maybe your colleagues too, say, yes, this is a really good fit for us. We should apply. I feel like we could be competitive. So talk about what that looks like, what it sounds like, why you got excited, and come up with a few key words, key phrases. Make sure that you're thinking about how that proves that you did your homework, that you understand what it is that they fund, why they're giving their funding, how they're giving their funding, so that they know you value this potential funding relationship so much that you did your due diligence, you researched them as an organization. You're going to pause. What do you think about what I see as a fit between our organizations? Give them a moment to react. You don't want to be getting into all the details of the project. You don't want to be telling them all your SMART objectives. You don't want to be telling them your budget amounts. You don't want to be telling them the specific nuances of your timeline. Real high level, why you are a fit with their funding program. And then let it settle with them for a second. Let them catch their breath and react. And if they say, oh, that does indeed sound like it could be a good fit for us. They're not promising you anything. It's not a guarantee. You could move on to your third talking point. Your third talking point would be any thoughtful questions you have based on your research. When you were researching the grant maker, maybe you had questions about if they would make multi-year grants. Maybe you had questions about if they would make grants of $100,000 to only returning grantees, or if a first-time grantee could be eligible for a grant of that size. Your questions will be nuanced to that specific grant maker, and they do indicate, again, proof that you were researching them, that you think they're a good potential funding partner, and you did your due diligence. They might say, Diane, I don't have any thoughtful questions to ask them. I'm pretty clear on their guidelines. I understand everything about them. What do you think I should ask them? I would encourage you to ask them a question that gets them talking about their funded work. Something like, could you please give me an example of a recent grantee that did a great job showcasing the outcomes of their funded work? Could you please give me an example of a recent grantee that did a great job promoting your funding partnership? Get them to talk about themselves. They're going to be proud of their work. And when you're listening to their response, they're giving you clues about how you could potentially then put forward a strong application. What are the sort of things that are important to them? Now let's go back to our second talking point. Remember, I said you're going to give that quick overview why you think they're a fit. Then you're going to pause and let them tell you if they agree for a fit. But there's also that alternative that they might say, I'm sorry, but I'm so excited about the work you're doing, but I don't think you're going to be a good fit for us this round. Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate your candid feedback. Is it possible that I could reach out in the future if your funding priorities changed or if we had a different project that we thought might be a fit. That would be your follow-up thoughtful question. So no matter what their response is to number 2, yes, we're a fit. No, we don't think you're a fit. You still want to ask a follow-up thoughtful question. If they said yes, you've got a few different options for what you want to ask them that would help you be extra competitive when you go to apply. If they say, no, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't think it's a fit, I want you to ask if it's okay if you connect with them again in the future. Find out if that door might remain cracked open a little bit for future contact should something open in the future. When we think about our talking points and what it sounds like to build these initial relationships, each one is going to be different. But the structure of your outreach, putting it on your calendar, using your grantmaker relationship questionnaire in order to find connections, and then using those 3 talking points, which again are in our relationship toolkit. I'm going to get that PDF link for you still today. But that's all in your handout that goes along with the slides for today. So as we think about how we use those tools, what we're doing is consistently approaching relationship development, even though we know that the conversations themselves are going to sound different from one grantmaker to the next. Now there's an exercise that we do, and sometimes actually we'll even do it when we do like a 2-day workshop with the Native Learning Center. We've been known to do this in class. We will sometimes ask folks to practice their talking points, and we'll give them 1 minute as a timer on the clock. I'm glad that we're virtual when we're doing it because no one, when we're in person, likes that activity. It never feels like enough time. It's a fake environment because you're not actually talking to a funder, you're talking to another colleague in the room, or if it's virtual, you're basically talking to yourself because everybody's muted. But practicing it in 1 minute and looking at how much you didn't get to say in that 1 minute, the timer almost always goes off and folks still have more they want to say. What that does is it makes people feel more comfortable with, all right, I don't have a lot of time. What would I cut out? What did I say that wasn't the most important? What could I leave out? So I would encourage you to practice. You can wait until you have a funder that you want to reach out to before you do the practice, but practice. Time yourself. Not that you have to keep it in a minute. Maybe you decide you want to practice it in 2 minutes, but see what you would cut out if then you had to deliver it in 1.5 minutes. What did you decide was some of the extraneous information that you were sharing that helped you get it to a slightly faster time box? And that way, when you're having the conversation, it's not that it's memorized, it's not that it's scripted, but you have that muscle memory of what did you want to say, what does it sound like when it's concise? And then you can naturally play off the conversation with that individual. Now, I will say, in person, over Zoom, over the phone, at a conference, at a community event, is absolutely our favorite way to have relationships started. But what often happens? Email, absolutely. So the good news is your talking points, those 3 things that I mentioned, makes for a beautiful outline for an email. So you'll be good to go. Ideally, go for the phone, go for the in-person conversation, but when all else fails, never going to be mad about having an email exchange with a grantmaker. It is still better than nothing at all. It is still a competitive advantage. So that's for if it's a new relationship. How many of you are in tribal organizations that already have grants as part of your revenue stream? So you already receive grant revenue from some combination of foundation or government entities. Go ahead and let me know in the public chat why for yes and for no. Could you please let me know? And while you're doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the link to our entire relationship resources section on our website. Everything there is free. There's YouTube videos and more blog links and stuff. But Brianna, I think Brooke might already have it. I know if I link to the guide, it's going to come in like a weird way that makes people give me their email again. I don't know if you have I don't know if you have access or if Brooke does to our relationship guide. It should already be a PDF somewhere within the resources we've given. Could you check for me?
Yes. Hold on one moment.
Okay, no rush. Let me know if we're able to get to it by the end. Otherwise, I'll try and get creative before we wrap up today. So some of you, thank you. So some of you do have then some grant revenue coming in, which would mean you have the technical relationships in place. You have a grant maker, you are a grantee, you're going to have varying levels of interaction already in place. You've already signed grant agreements, you might already be sending grant reports. So those are very technical, transactional elements of the relationship. And that's good. I mean, we need to have those in place. We need to manage them. We need to abide by their expectations for when we report and how we report and by what day and what time we report. Those are all things that build trust within grant maker relationships. But I want you to take your relationships to the next level with your current grant makers, because that's how we might get another grant award. That's how we might get a larger grant award. For those that you already have received funding through or from, you have already done some really hard work. You got a competitive application into them. They said yes. You're starting to implement the funded program or project. What I want you to remember as we're trying to not be transactional is that there are people who are managing this work. And so my colleague and friend, Max Del Senor, who is the assistant director at the Northern New York Community Foundation, gave this phrase to me quite a while ago, and it's still one of my favorites. He encourages you to think about next level gratitude. Because, as he says, gratitude has no boundaries. As a grantee, extending a thank you beyond the report can carry tremendous value with a funder. Like that's a little obvious, a little bit of a forehead slap there, isn't it? Can carry tremendous value. But the reason that Max said it, the reason that I include this everywhere is because having been a grant maker and having continued to stay connected to many of my past peers, it's not what always is remembered. Folks get busy, they've got lots on their plate, they're implementing the very necessary programs and services in the community. And so sometimes grant makers, they're treated like entities. They're treated transactionally. I would rather you think about your grant makers like you would an individual donor. I don't want you approaching grant makers like a faceless entity. I want you thinking about the people who are reading your application, the people who are reading your report, the people who are processing your financial drawdown requests. You don't want to surprise them. You want them to feel valued regardless of where they are in the organization, regardless of their role. So how can we do that? Keeping in the back of our mind that we never want to treat our grant maker like an ATM. Why would we go to a grant maker if they were an ATM? Because our bank accounts are getting a little low and need some cash. So if grant makers only hear from us when it's time to ask for more money, they're going to feel like they are part of a very transactional relationship. So I'm going to show you 4 different recommended steps. Now, you could say, I want to do all 4, but they don't have to be sequential in terms of the order in which you implement them. I have them more in I think it's ease of ability to implement is why I have them ordered in the way that I do. So if you're going to take one step towards treating your grant makers not like an ATM, I'd encourage you to take this first step. It is like that, so you could build on it sequentially. But if you say, I think I'm going straight to step 3, I'll come back for step 1 later. Okay, but I do think they build on each other as we might by climbing the stairs. So the first, I would like for you to go beyond form letters where you are saying thank you for the grant award. Now, I say letter, it could be an email, it could be an email with a PDF attachment. So I'm using a very broad definition these days of letter, but for that initial expression of gratitude to the grantmaker. Dear grantmaker, thank you so much for the grant award. We are in receipt of check number 12345 for $50,000. We are so excited for your support and the work that it is going to enable. We have to do those things. Those are the basic best practices of receiving the funds, acknowledging the funds. Super cut and dry. If we get that more than one grant a year, we probably have some sort of template letter that we're using or a template structure for our email. And we replace address, funder name, dollar amount. We might have a little section where we say what the grant designated purpose is. But at a minimum, we could think about some more creative personal ways to say thank you. I'm curious if you're willing to share in the public chat about anything you have tried or you have done in the past that is a more personalized thank you to a grant maker. If you have any examples, by all means, I would love to hear about them in the public chat. When we think about different examples, here's some big broad ideas to get you started. I'm excited to see what you might share in the public chat. In addition to your form letter, whether it's form letter or form email letter, but you might also have your CEO, your executive director, or a leader in the tribal organization, you might have them handwrite a note expressing their gratitude, how grateful they are for the support. You might think about what is happening in the funded program and think about if there's anything that you could then give as an expression of gratitude to the grant maker. So, for example, if there was any sort of art programming being done as part of the funded project, maybe that could be sent. A piece could be sent. Photos of the work being done, if you have permission for that, could be sent to the grant maker. We've seen folks that receive scholarship funds through a grant award. Maybe it's an institution of higher ed. Maybe it's a workforce development program, but there's something where scholarships are given. The example that I'm thinking of was a nursing program that had received scholarship funding, and they asked that those who got scholarships hand wrote a thank you note to the foundation that supported their particular scholarship. And so they tried to make it really easy. They gave everybody a specific note card that they could write on. They took care of getting it mailed. They offered that folks could come in. They gave free pizza so that the nursing students were all writing their thank you notes at the same time. So they tried to take away as many of the barriers to getting it done as possible. But those are things and efforts that are expressing that next level gratitude. In fact, here is a picture of 2 different thank yous that I've seen go to grant makers. On the left-hand side is one that came from an adult day program for those individuals with Alzheimer's disease. And it had been a grant to put art therapy programming in place for that day program. And so you don't know who is in the program. There was no identifying information, but there was permission given that the artwork that these individuals created could be shared. The second one, again, see how I talk about permission? This one's going to have a whole lot of permission. You might think, those real fingerprints? It's a little, yes. We want to make sure that there's permission, especially if we're doing something like that that's real fingerprints. But this was artwork created by a nonprofit preschool program that went to a local funder. Be creative with what you have access to as a way to say thank you beyond the formal form letter. Other ways that we can think about expressing gratitude, it might be where you interact with the grant maker. where you could authentically say, because you bumped into them at the coffee line at a conference, or because you saw them at a special event waiting for, the snacks to be passed. Oh, I just wanted to say thank you again for your support. It is so meaningful to have your funding support. Hard stop. I don't need to give a program update. I don't need to ask for more money. But just to sincerely acknowledge that I recognize them, I know that they're a funder, and we're so grateful for your support. That by itself, also amazing. When we're at those events, actually, Diane, it's not going to be like, I'm not going to be the one at those events. It's going to be some of our tribal leaders, or it's going to be my colleagues who are going to be there. So then you want to make sure that they know who they might want to say thank you to. So if it's a conference, for example, we were working with some museum professionals. There were 3 of the team members going to a conference in, I think it was in DC that year. But we looked at the conference attendee list in advance and said, if you naturally run into any of these people, here are some of the things you might want to say. So again, it wasn't about asking them for more money. It wasn't about giving them a report on the current grant. Some people they already had money with, some people they wanted to get money with. But it was looking at who did they think would be there and preparing those that would be in the room. Super high level friendly stuff. No pressure to have all the talking points ready, because that's not the type of environment that you're in, right? This wasn't designed to be a space to ask for more money or ask for questions about alignment or fit the way the talking point's designed. Now, when we think about what else we can do, oh, Candace, I see an example in the public chat. This is going to be one of our higher level, one of our future steps in just a moment here. So saying thank you, notes, products from grant programs, saying things politely at events that we might run into a grant maker at, that's step 1. If we could do that, it's super helpful, right? That's going beyond ATM. It's going towards an authentic interaction, something that would be more of a relationship between the 2 organizations. Now, step 2. So this one takes a little more effort. It's going to take more people probably to be involved. And it's about excelling at the terms of the grant. You might say, but we got the grant funding. Shouldn't we be doing what we said we would? Yes, absolutely yes. But I said to excel at grant implementation, at the requirements, not doing the minimum expected of us, but going above and beyond. So maybe you're thinking like, it sounds sort of like a school report card, right? Or if we're thinking about like personnel annual type review type things, right? Like always exceeds expectations. It's a 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. We want to think about our bare minimum is doing what we said we would, when we said we would, how we said we would. So that's our minimum expectation that the grant maker has for us. How is it that we can help them to understand that we are excelling? What would that look like? What would make us stand out? We want them to know that not only do we do what we said we would, when we said we would, how we said we would, but what would make them really excited to have us as a grantee again. Here's a few examples. You might, we'll start on the left, you might reach out if you have questions about maybe a budget change, or you had more snow days, so school was closed a few more times than expected, and so you're looking at some changes in order to address some decrease in student participation because of those snow days. But asking questions, asking for ideas, advice, maybe permission to make changes. Idea 2, sharing updates beyond when formal reports are due. If something really amazing happens, tell them now. Why make them wait for a report? Why hide something so fantastic from your funding partners? Inviting them to things, events, performances, workshops, education series, even if you don't think they're going to come, even if it isn't necessarily directly what they funded, but those invitations go a long way for them to understand what your work is and to also be able to visualize it. If you're having site visits, if you're holding open houses, maybe you had a ribbon cutting, absolutely send them an invitation. The important part is that they receive the invitation. They know that you are thinking about them. It's absolutely a bonus if they show up. But you want to let them know that you are thinking about them. We're going to look at public recognition for funding and promoting grantmaker work in just a few moments, because those are like much higher level. Again, they take more people and more capacity to do some of that. But these are all ways that we can excel at our grant terms. And the one that I want to highlight the most, if of all those things I just had on the screen, if you were only going to focus on one, I would make it this. Whenever a question arises about the implementation of your grant, gee, will the funder be okay with that? Are we allowed to move that money? Is it okay that we're going to change the way that we're measuring this program? The answer is probably going to be yes from the grant maker. They trust you to be the experts and get the work done, but we never want to assume that. And so instead, we want to talk to the grant maker, email, phone, whatever it is, it's their preference. We want to let them know that they are a valued partner. We don't want to surprise them at a report. We don't want to have to ask for forgiveness after the fact. Nope. That is not a good way to maintain grantmaker relationships. In fact, that's going to decrease grantmaker trust with your organization and potentially hurt your options for future grant funding. So site visits are something that I mentioned as an idea for how we could go beyond. Let people come see your new physical space. Let people come see the recognition ceremony for your scholarship recipients. If it is physically possible, if it is permissible for those that you're working with, that is a great way for funders to see and understand your work, for it not just to be something that they are imagining when they're reading about it on paper. I know Candace had shared that they invite grantors to events that are funded by the grant, or to things like a grand opening or a groundbreaking. And Candace had said that the grants fund. Even if their grant didn't fund it, if it's technically feasibly possible, if there's enough space, I'd invite any of the grant makers, because it's the fact that they know you were thinking about them. That is what is most important. So as we're climbing those steps, thinking about what else could we do to enhance a relationship. And this is all true whether we're talking about government or foundation. There are different rules for different agencies and departments for what they may or may not be able to attend or how they would want to be recognized. But all of this is possible with both types of grant makers. The third idea, the third big step you could take in terms of enhancing your existing relationships, is by thinking about how you share information publicly about the funding you've received. So some pretty basic examples here. The Dollar General Foundation had funded an organization, and so they put out a social media post, thanked the foundation. Now, okay, so the foundation might see that it's actually there, but what do you also have? Unlike the days when I was a grant maker and you would make grantees send out press releases announcing a grant award, and then they would try to hopefully get published maybe once in a local paper, and they'd clip the newspaper clipping, and then they'd send it in with their reports as proof that not only did they send it, but they managed to get somebody to publish it. The nice part about social media is if your tribal organization has the ability to publicly put anything out, you control then, does it get published or not per your own policies, and you can, instead of having to rely on local, more traditional media, you've got something to show in your report. Hey, look, we were promoting your funding partnership. Same idea here in this example. It was the Andy Warhol Foundation, again, announcing a grant award using the hashtag grant award. So it might not be just people in your network. It might not be just people in the Andy Warhol Foundation network, but also people who are generally, like me, getting excited, paying attention to hashtags like grant award. Yeah, that's something that I think that's fun. I love to just click on LinkedIn posts that talk about grant awards. It's a real feel-good thing. Even if it's not your own hard work, to see grants creating great impact, oh, I get so excited. One more example about, actually no, it's not true, there's two more, about examples of grant award announcements, so recognition of the funding that has been received. It looks good for you as the recipient, and it really also looks great for the grant maker. So the thing I like about this is that not only is it a thank you, and yes, it's got the funder's logo on it. We're looking at the MacArthur Foundation, or I'm sorry, the McDonald Foundation. I'll get my glasses checked later. But what we see is that, what was this funding? Before I even read anything in the text, I get a sense that there was some sort of dental program that was funded. So even when folks are scrolling through, they can see, that nonprofit that I love, that tribal organization that I'm connected with, they just got funding from a foundation for a dental program. It's okay that I don't know all the details, but that's really pretty cool. And somebody might just give it a little love on the way by. And all of a sudden you might have more reach and even better statistics to share in terms of reach related to funding partnership promotion with your grant maker. This fourth example, I almost forgot that I had it in here. There are lots of grant makers that love to take pictures or have pictures taken where they are giving you the money. Let me know Y for yes, N for no. Have any of you ever been part of a picture like that? It could have been a little check, like in the picture on the screen, or it could have been one of those like big whiteboard checks that they erase and reuse. Some grant makers are very beholden to that idea. They love the big check picture. And there's some media outlets, but that's the only way they'll even promote or save space for grant awards. My own local little paper, that's it. They're not going to talk about grant awards unless there's like a big check picture attached with it. All right. So sometimes you need to know who the different people are involved to understand if that's important. The big check picture, or in this case, like I said on the screen, the little check picture, it's okay. It's technically what the grant maker wants. It's giving them recognition for the funding they are giving. But what I usually like to encourage is that you pair the check picture with a picture that's more related to the impact that's being created with the money, so that it helps others see what sort of work you're doing, what sort of work is being funded. So I do like, if it's like two pictures in a slideshow type thing, right? Like I've got a few that I could attach in Instagram, or I put like 2 or 3 up on Facebook, or 2 or 3 on LinkedIn. But I would make it so that one is the big check picture and then like another 1 or 2 around the impact. Now that's about promoting the funding itself, the funding you have received. Big last final step. We could promote the grant maker's work. This isn't your work. It could be, I mean, right, step 3 is you're promoting your funded work. But step 4, look at all the good things that this grant maker is helping to do. So this takes deeper digging and deeper understanding of your funding partner than the other work. That's why I said in terms of like the level that we're achieving in terms of like next level gratitude, step 4 takes some different strategizing and some different digging around and some different watching for your grant makers. And so you may or may not feel comfortable with this for some grant makers. Maybe there's one that you do that you really pay a lot of attention to, you really got to have a close relationship with. It's okay if you say this is too much, but I want to explain to you what it is and that there's kind of some levels to how you can approach it. So for example, I'm going to go back actually to the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Remember how I said that was a by invitation foundation only? We looked at their CEO on LinkedIn to see how many connections. Well, the Annie E. Casey Foundation put out different data reports and in fact is most well known for the Kids Count data book, put out once a year, and it is an absolute just wow. It is a wealth of information that then children serving organizations use for the next year. Sometimes it's good data, sometimes it's heartbreaking, but still good data to use for getting other grant revenue, for making the case for policy change. It can be used in a lot of different ways. So whether you are already an Annie E. Casey Foundation grantee, or maybe you really want to be an Annie E. Casey Foundation grantee, when they release their Kids Count data book, promoting it, sharing it, making sure that others know that this great data is available, that's promoting the funder's work. There is a shared benefit to you having access to the data, to others knowing that the data is available. And so whether it's something, a simple retweet, well, anyway, it's X, it's still a retweet, but like a reshare on any network, that's okay. It might get their attention. What would really count towards step 4? A reshare or a repost. I'll say repost. If I'm on LinkedIn and I go to share something, it's going to say repost. And I'll say I could repost just with no comments, or it'll say repost with your thoughts. If you want to think about promoting your grantmaker's work, please always repost with your thoughts. Give it the context for why is this important for you? Why is this important for your tribal organization? Tag the organization that you're talking about. Yes, was their original post perhaps that you're sharing about, but make sure that they see what you're saying. Yes, some of it you want to be altruistic, you want to be a little selfless in what you're sharing, but this is also part of the grant game. You're trying to build a relationship, and there is a mutual benefit to both of you for the work being shared. The example on the screen is showing the context, not just share, not just repost, but share with thoughts, repost with thoughts. Not just a quick, I can click this button and move on with my day, but explaining why. Why is this still important? One other example, and I draw usually from social media because there are some ways that we might see you promote grantmakers' work, maybe in like your e-newsletter or on your website, but it's usually in a small audience, and it's something that might disappear. Whereas, well, what we put up on social might stay for a long time, and our grantmakers are more likely to see it. This example is from an organization that was not funded, congratulating the group that was funded. This is like the best example of grant, we'll say grant sportsmanship. Right? If you think about what it's like, if you ever played in any sort of sports league as a kid, or you're playing now in something intramural, but like that whole like, oh, good game, even when you've lost, right? You're standing there in line, like, oh. But you're still, like, oh, that was a good game. You won. You did it. Yeah, that was a really good serve there in that last bit of the volleyball game. Oh, that was a really nice pitch that got that final strikeout in baseball, whatever it is. So, but to do that in grants, to publicly say, wow, congratulations to the winner of this grant program. Good job. Really excited to see what you're going to do. That's so cool. It's showing your good sportsmanship. It's acknowledging the other great work that's being done. And it's showing what, even though we didn't win with that grant maker, we know we're aligned with them. Look at how far we made it. Oh, we were so close. Maybe next time. But it is helping to promote that grant maker that has a mission, a goal, a purpose that's aligned with your work. So we keep coming back to this idea of funding partnership. Who are we aligned with? How do we say that the funder has the money, want to do good things with their money? We want to do good things and we need their money. How are we parallel? How are we aligned in what we are trying to do and what they are trying to impact, what they are trying to change, what they are trying to support. Any of the examples I gave today, right? Please don't feel that there's pressure to do all of the things I have talked about today. Pick one and add it to the work that you're going to do in the fourth quarter of the calendar. That'd be great. Any action that you take from today and add to your plan for the next quarter, or any one or two that you take and add to the next calendar year, are all going to decrease the likelihood that you will accidentally treat a grant maker like an ATM. Diane, we get it. Don't treat folks like an ATM. But it inadvertently, it happens. And the reason it happens is because folks are busy. I don't like the busy word, right? Our calendars are full of things that we are very passionate and excited about. But your plates are full, if not overflowing, with doing the work that you're trying to get funded. And so relationships in that grant life cycle image sometimes fall by the wayside. Sometimes we unintentionally shortcut our way around them, and not in a good shortcut sort of way. We don't want to shortcut it because it is going to decrease over time our likelihood of being competitive. And we are absolutely in one of the most competitive times in grants I have seen ever in my 25 years in the field. Don't get me wrong, things have always been competitive. This is a super competitive moment. With all the shifts happening, we've got foundations that are seeing record volumes of applications. We see foundations that are closing application processes early because of how many applications they're getting. On the government side, we see some of the shortest application deadline windows that we have ever seen. All of those things play into then our big picture. How do we approach our best practices? We want to focus on engaging with our grant makers anytime we can, whether we're getting close to applying, whether we just got funded 2 months ago, whether we don't have a report due for 2 more months. We always want to be thinking about how to interact with our current funding partners and make it stronger. Make it more likely that we will get funding again. So I say easy-ish. I don't dare say easy because it takes time. I've given you lots of options for things you could do to enhance relationships, whether we're talking about foundations or government, in terms of your grants. But to me, I think a challenge that you could take on is to look at your grant calendar or look at your grant plan for deadlines that are coming up. I want you to think about, for each of those grant makers, maybe you have 5, maybe you have 7, maybe you have 15. But look at where they are and when you owe them another application or when you owe them another report. And pick a date on the calendar at least 4 weeks before then, maybe 8, maybe 12, but like at least a month before you owe them the next thing. And come up with a reason to send them an email, to send them a handwritten note, to send them a PDF of something that was on social media about the funded program. Send each of them one extra thing that was positive, something that you were thinking about them or something you wanted to say thank you. Look at your grant calendar, when something due, count back at least 4 weeks and send them at least one thing. I am not encouraging you to send them all the things. No. That'll overwhelm them. And they'll be like, what? Why am I getting all these things? Right? Don't subscribe them to all sorts of stuff that they didn't ask to be subscribed to. That's against a whole bunch of other email rules. We don't want to do that. We don't want to create spam. But a one-on-one email or a handwritten note or something we deliver in the mail, absolutely. One thing. What do you think? Is that feasible? Is that something that you could try to do? Look at your grant plan, your grant deadlines, your grant calendar, and make a note. One thing. You can decide what it is when you get closer, but put a reminder for yourself at least 4 weeks before to do one thing that is extra. I'm here to be your accountability buddy in the grant space. Let me know in the public chat if you think that's feasible. If you think you can do that. Maybe instead you want to ask for their input. You want to ask for some other introductions. Certainly those could also be other ways to engage. But I like that single challenge idea. Can we do one thing extra? One extra thank you, one extra shared piece of information. Let me know in the public chat if you are up for that challenge. I won't follow up with you. I won't show up at your office door to ask. A little bit of mutual accountability if you want to let me know in the chat if you think you're up to the challenge. Now we're coming to the bottom of the hour. Our time together today is just about up. If you've got a question about any of the relationship content, please do let me know. I'll stick around and keep an eye on the public chat for any questions that you might have. You can also always email me, diane@dhleonardconsulting.com. Happy to answer questions at any time. And it looks like Brianna also was able to get that PDF for me. It looks like there's an extra link now in shared notes. That should take you to your relationship guide that I had mentioned. Sorry, it wasn't there when we started, but it should be there for you now. All right, I think, Brianna, I'm going to watch for questions to come up, but I think it's back to you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I did share the link in the shared notes. I'm also just going to go ahead and add it to the public chat as well. And then I will take control. Thank you so much, Diane, for your time and effort with this presentation. It was very, very helpful. I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone did as well. As I close out this webinar, of course, please feel free to submit any other questions or comments for Diane that you may have. And then I am also going to go ahead and copy and paste. I think that it may already be here, but I'm just going to put it here again. Our feedback survey. Let me just go ahead and add that. But yes, guys, our feedback survey is there in the chat. Please take a moment to complete the survey about today's webinar that I've linked there. It only takes about a minute or so, and your feedback really helps us to do more what is working well and just to improve on the areas that we need to. We do invite you to be as candid as you like because the survey is completely anonymous, but it does help us make the experience better for you. And then, of course, we hope that you can join us for our next webinar. The next webinar is going to be NAHASDA Required Policies and Procedures, Day 1, and that's going to be on September 2nd, 2025 with Cheryl Causey. And the show times are there listed. So please go ahead and make sure that you are there for that one. We do also encourage you as well when we're having that particular webinar to, ask as many questions as possible. Cheryl is very good about answering questions as well. And also feel free to access this particular webinar and any other recorded webinars at our new Cathedra Webinars archive, now posted to our YouTube channel. You can feel free to view them at any time and share them with your colleagues and friends. And please also check out our upcoming events posted to our various social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We also have an in-house produced podcast titled The Hope of Thing, a Native American podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within Native American housing and self-determination. We have a lot of great episodes that are coming up, so you don't want to miss that. You can also listen on Simplecast, Google Cast, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as view the recordings with our guests on YouTube. And once again, everyone, thank you so much for participating and joining us today. We hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we hope to connect with you real soon. Again, Diane, thank you so much. Thank you. I always love all of your webinars. I always learn so much. So thank you again for today. I'm going to leave the chat up so that you guys can access the links. So I'll be hanging out here. Thank you so much, Diane.